Hey Google, how much is an OBC job?
Hello world, welcome to this video where we will clarify the question, how much is an OBC service? I can already tell you in advance it is the most expensive way to send a shipment. But we will clarify how much exactly while we are on the way to Frisco, San Francisco with Condor in their A330 Neo. You can see right here in the back. And why do companies book the service despite the high costs? We will check out during the way. So my today's studio will be the airplane, the airport, the Pacific Coast and Silicon Valley. And we will check out all the questions that come along the way. Come with me.
First milestone is the first mile. That means the goods are somewhere in a warehouse in stock, or maybe they are freshly produced in a factory. Somehow they need to come from this point to the airport, to the OBC. Maybe the OBC jump in his own car, driving to the factory or to the warehouse, pick up the goods. Maybe the OBC will take a cab. Or maybe the boxes are so big and so large, and it's such a big number of boxes, that there is a bigger van needed. In this case, a roadside courier will be hired, and therefore we put 50 to 300 on the bill.
Back in the terminal, it is time for check-in. Very high costs for the OBC service can arise here. Every airline has different tariffs for extra baggage, and there can be a very large price difference. Here it's just an example of Lufthansa for a flight from Frankfurt to Washington in economy class, as most OBCs are flying. At the check-in counter, the next bag after your free allowance is 100 euros. Any additional is 210, that's a big jump. And then you have larger and or heavier baggage, which can cost you up to 440 for each. I had several jobs where I paid thousands of dollars or euros for excess baggage, but to meet the average costs, let's say 150 to 500 for our calculation. After check-in is done and the luggage checks are on it, I went to customs to do the export. Of course, there needs to be export papers, and for a custom broker and his service, we put 100 on our bill. But now it's really time to hop on board our flight to San Francisco. Only pasta available in Condor's economy, no chicken or pasta choice. So the biggest chunk of the cake is the flight ticket. They are in average between 500 and 2000 euros. So I looked up some random routings. They are booked on the day of departure, and also you fly back on the next day. So this is a typical business trip, and the airlines know when companies buying and paying for tickets, they don't care about the money. So the airlines charge a lot of money.
So Google has also a really powerful search machine for flights specifically. And therefore I looked up some prices, always booked on the same day of departure or maybe the next day. And always with a return flight from the OBC on the next day back to the home base. So I found out, for example, Paris to Bangkok for around 1,550 euros, Amsterdam to Monterrey in Mexico, and also return on the next day. 2,700, oh my gosh. London to Shanghai, Pudong Airport. Same day departure, returning the next day, that was 1,400 euros. Then, for example, Bangkok to Jakarta, a regional Asian job, possibly for 350. It's a more cheaper one. And I found really a bargain from Hong Kong to San Francisco on United Airlines on a non-stop flight. And also the return flight is a non-stop, and that is only for 800 euros. Same day departure, returning the next day. This is actually unusual cheap. So before the pandemic, prices from Germany to the States has always be about 1,000 euros. So that was an average price for a same day departure or day after. So right now we are more moving around 2,000 euros. Just looked up one price from Frankfurt to Washington, Dallas, and returning the next day it's 1,600. One of my most expensive flights, intra-European, was a flight to Ljubljana, sorry if I pronounce it wrong, in Slovenia. That one was 1,000 euros. And guys, this is a 1 hour and 10 minutes flight. So I just looked it up again, and at the time it is 650 for a 1 hour and 10 minutes flight. So yeah, price is really sometimes crazy if you're going on airlines. And then I looked up something really crazy. McAllen in Texas, a place where I have been a couple of times, not that often, but a couple of times. So departing from Frankfurt and returning, of course, the next day. That one was over 4,000 euros, and it's all economy.
So for our calculation, let's say 500 to 2,000 euros. And of course there is the OBC itself. So some companies, they pay as low as 100 per day, others pay 250 rate per day. So it always depends on how long is your trip. One-day trips are really rare, usually for intra-European trip or trips within Asia, within the States, a domestic trip. It's a 2 days trip, and if you're going overseas, it's 3 to 4 days. And then of course the hotel room, 100 to 150, that is what you usually have. And most companies pay kick-off fee, that is to cover the cost to get to the airport or park at the airport, to cover the roaming fees, so everything that comes along to fulfill the job. So depending on if it's a regional job or a overseas job, for our example calculation here, let's say 500 to 1,000 for the courier. By the way, look at this loo. This is so tight, that's really crazy. I'm a slim guy, I barely can't stand in here, it's really crazy. And yeah, it's pretty modern, it's actually really nice looking, but it is so tight. I mean, this is a wide-body aircraft, and I don't hope this is the future of wide-body aircrafts. Just check on the loo in the very back of the airplane. It's not as tight as the one in the middle section, but yeah, it's still tight. Alright, just made it through immigration, waiting at the luggage belt for luggage to be arrived. And as soon as I have it, I need to go to customs to make the import declaration. And of course, someone needs to do the paperwork. So for a customs broker, we put another 100 euros on the bill.
And then of course we have the last mile, which is pretty much the same like the first mile, depending on the size of the shipment, number of the boxes. You need to take a big van, a big truck. So you need a local courier, street courier. But if it fits into a car, you can take an Uber or you can take a rental car. Always depend on the situation, how far it is, what is the cost of an Uber, how much is a rental car. So yeah, today we take a rental. So maybe 50 bucks for an Uber, maybe 300 for a roadside courier, for a local one. You never know, each OBC job is different, so we put 50 to 300 on the bill.
So why then choose an OBC service despite the high costs? So there are two main reasons. The first one is time, and the second one is a guided transport.
Welcome to Surfers Paradise, the Pacific Ocean, right next to Highway number 1. Only 20 minutes away from Frisco Airport. And as these guys down there have a lot of fun playing in the water, we are doing our mess. So in the end, we have a total of 1,500 euros to 4,400 euros. This is for our example job. And of course, every job is different. I already had jobs where I had to pay 2,000 and more euros only for excess baggage, so it could be also much more expensive than 4,400 euros. But in the end, for our example, 1,500 to 4,400. And this is quite a lot of money, yes. So then it's the big question, why still companies send a shipment for that much money? And there are two main reasons, as I already told you. There is the time, and this is one of the most important. Most shipments can be delivered within 24 hours. And of course, if you have a job from Europe to, let's say, Australia, a really far distance, and especially if there are no more flights available because the customer booked it in the night or in the late evening, then you have to wait for the next day until you can start the job. And also first mile need to be done, and maybe the goods are 3 to 5 hours away from the airport. So yeah, it could be a little bit more than 24 hours, but most of the jobs are done within 24 hours. Within 24 hours, the goods are at their final destination. And yeah, so that's the main key. So we all know that time is money. And I will give you an example why it could be so much cheaper for a company paying, let's say, 5,000 euros for an OBC service. So we will ask again our lovely search machine we all know. It's Google time. So when I talk about my daily OBC life here on the channel, I always need to be cautious, because I also sign contracts with companies about disclosure, about hiding informations. So of course I cannot tell everything, but in the end, if there's something unclear, why not ask Google? So if we ask Google for the specific question, how much it is if a company has to shut down the production line, so then we find out numbers like $260,000 each hour. This is an insane number, an insane amount of money. So right now you can see why it is much more cheaper to send an OBC half around the world, even if it's 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 euros for a job, for the service. It's much more cheaper for the companies. And the same thing applies to airlines. So if an aircraft is grounded due to technical problems, it costs the airline also thousands each day, if not 100,000. An aircraft is only making money if it's in the air. So in the end, just send an OBC half around the world to bring the spare parts wherever it is needed, and then they could be back in the air to make money. 700 miles that way to Mexico. It's a country where OBC is really often going. So that brings us to the second point why companies choose an OBC service. Yeah, the other point is that it is the other point is that companies want to have a guided transport, transported in person. So that also means that the person, the OBC, will take care of the goods. And so there's a bunch of reasons why even with an OBC job, there could bump up some problems, like the airline lost your luggage, or actually not lost it. Sometimes they don't load it on the flight for a couple of reasons. So whenever you're at your destination, you will stay there and you will be in contact with the airline all the time and make sure that the goods will be loaded on the next flight as soon as possible. And I also had some really not so funny stories, like I was flying west and my luggage was loaded on a flight that was going to the east. So the boxes ended up in Russia. That was before the pandemic and before all the rest in this world happened. So yeah, they had to send it from there back to my destination. It was a really curious thing, but I wasn't the only person had an experience like this. Yeah, when you are around with other OBCs and you're chatting and everybody's telling the most funny or not so funny and curious stories, then yeah, you will shake your ears, as we say in Germany. It's really crazy what sometimes could happen. But the most important thing is the courier is an experienced guy. He keeps cool and he knows all the tools he has to make sure that the goods will be as soon as possible at the right and final destination. And even nowadays we have air tags. It helps us a lot to spot where the goods are. So that's also a really, really key point when it comes to problems. And I mean, things could happen. We are all just humans, and even machines could do wrong things. So in the end, yeah, the OBC is there and will take care of this shipment. If the shipment is in a warehouse from a cargo airline, then yeah, it's just one piece of 1,000 pieces. And for example, it is summer and a pilot has to decide to offload one pallet because of the maximum takeoff weight, and then maybe your shipment is on this pallet, then yeah, nobody takes care about it. For them it's just, what should we do? So also many people think that all the goods that are transported by OBCs are super expensive. Actually, it isn't. It's not about the value of the goods itself, it's about the value that is behind the stories, behind the scene. So let's say someone wants to send a contract, a signed contract, and to receive this contract with the signature of the other party. This contract could be worth a lot of money, 100,000, maybe millions. On the same time, this contract for another person, he cannot use it, it's just worthless, or it's just worth the paper it is written on. So in the end, sometimes it's also important to transport some documents. Even the value isn't really high, or only high for the person that wants to receive this contract. And of course, this happened much more often in the past. It's not so common anymore, unfortunately, in these digital times.
And then of course the question arises, who is the shipper? Who books the OBC service? Well, it can be both the buyer or the seller. Of course, a seller wants to have his goods as fast as possible, but sometimes the seller is obligated by contract to deliver the goods just in time, and therefore they want to avoid any penalties, which is really common in the automotive industry. And by the way, this is Coyote Point, a really good spot to watch airplanes landing and also starting at San Francisco Airport. Here we go, Emirates. After 15 hours into the air, they are approaching to San Francisco Airport. Pretty nice. And while I am walking here, I ask myself, why is Chicago the windy city? Actually, San Francisco should be the windy city.
Holy guacamole! It is 8 p.m. here in the San Francisco area, which means it is 5 a.m. back home. And that means I am awake for 22 hours right now. I didn't feel that tired today, but you can see it's not always funny to fly around. It's not about holiday. It is a real job. It could be a really exhausting job. So guys, if you say you want to be an OBC, keep in mind there are also some downsides coming with the job. And one of the biggest points is, of course, the lack of sleep. If you have something important, and like I say again, it's not about the value all the time, sometimes of course, but you should need the parts as soon as possible, no matter what is the street price, the value of the goods, you just need them as soon as possible. So it could be much more cheaper for you, sending a guy half around the world.
I hope some of your questions are cleared, and I hope you liked it. Or let me say, if you see this, I guess you liked it because you watched until the end. So even if you didn't give me a like on this video, and even if you didn't subscribe to the channel yet, I still want to say thank you. Thank you for watching. Not only the airplanes that are landing, also for watching my videos. I hope you will be there next week for a new video. And until then, I just want to remind you, we all live under the same horizon. So be nice to each other. Goodbye, world!